I haven't built this one yet. Hello, welcome, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Benjamin. Welcome to my book club. Today we're talking about another Warhammer 40,000 novel, this time by one of the best authors the Black Library has. Mr. Dan Abnett, author of Gaunt's Ghosts, Eisenhorn, and one of my favourite Warhammer novels of all time, 𝕓𝕠𝕠𝕟𝕟. The thrilling story of the pilots of the Aeronautica Imperialis, basically the Air Force of the Imperium. 𝕓𝕠𝕟𝕟 was always this thrilling, edge-of-your-seat, exciting story that I always adored because it explored an aspect of the Imperium's armed forces that we very rarely see in books. So when I found out that a sequel was coming out for it, I was so excited. And I picked it up as soon as I could, which wasn't very quickly due to Black Library's infuriating way of printing books. This is Interceptor City by Dan Abnett. This is, as I said, a sequel to 𝕓𝕠𝕟𝕟, and because of that, the book and this review do have some minor spoilers for the book 𝕓𝕠𝕟𝕟. You can read Interceptor City without reading 𝕓𝕠𝕟𝕟. You will just be spoiled the sort of final fates of some of the characters as it gets discussed very early in this book. Speaking of the characters from 𝕓𝕠𝕟𝕟, Interceptor City follows ℓ𝕓𝕓, a former hotshot pilot. Interceptor City picks us up in Bree's journey a couple of decades after the events of 𝕓𝕠𝕟𝕟. Bree kept flying as an interceptor ace for several years after 𝕓𝕠𝕟𝕟 until finally being shot down, and has since then spent time post-recovery mostly as a supply pilot, flying large support and supply planes. She's long gone from the interceptor pilot ace that she used to be and is trying to move away from that life. In her own paraphrased words, the only interceptor pilots that are still around at her age are either dead or crazy. However, a chance meeting with one of her companions from the 𝕓𝕠𝕟𝕟 days leads her to being conned? Tricked? Pushed into service with Circus 66. This is a very unique flight deck taking place in the skeleton of a destroyed hive, where the unique aspects of this environment mean turnover rate and attrition are very high. Jumping into the things that really excited me about this book, the first one is obviously the aerial action. I find it hard to believe that Dan Abnett wasn't sitting there with a little Forge World Avenger and some Hell Talons and being like, whoosh, whoo. Vesperous Hive, which the pilots of Circus 66 call Interceptor City,
Roll credits,
is such a different environment than I think we've ever really read in a book about dogfighting. This is not the aerial duels in the open air at 20,000 feet that we saw in 𝕓𝕠𝕟𝕟. This is planes weaving in amongst the streets. This is a dead city, the dead hive. Planes are dodging light posts, going underneath pedestrian footbridges, diving through manufactories, breaking through the windows of once great cathedrals, flying around inside these giant forges. This is tight, claustrophobic, fast-paced, tense action, which makes flying around this urban maze perhaps even more dangerous than the enemy themselves. This confusing, tight, clustered environment, combined with the 3D aspect of aerial combat, could very easily make this a hard book to follow, but Dan Abnett has once again made it just so easy, so very readable. Somehow the man just understands this sort of combat. At no point was I confused at where all the different players were. I knew where the different planes were, I knew what courses they were taking and their headings relative to each other. So at no point did someone shoot someone else and I was just like, oh, that came out of nowhere. I understood and could see in my head the entire dogfight, which leads this to be perhaps my favorite dogfighting book that I've ever read. And the tone and the atmosphere around Vesperous Hive and around Circus 66 is fantastic. The characters have that hotshot bravado outer surface that you need as a fighter pilot in these sort of stories, but they also all have this unique inner turmoil, these unique emotions, and their unique way of dealing with this situation. Vesperous Hive just chews up pilots, so there's no need to get to know the new pilots because they're not going to be around for very long. And the pilots that are left all know that their days are numbered. They all know that this is not the sort of place where you just serve your time and then go back to a different front. They're here and they're not going to be here for very long because this is a murderous environment. And the way that this affects them all is unique in each individual and is explored relatively well for the most part and gives the whole book this dreary, tense tone. And speaking of the characters, our main character, ℓ𝕓𝕓, as this middle-aged woman, is not the sort of protagonist we see a lot in these sort of military sci-fi, military fiction books. but she's done so fantastically well. And the book in first person, dealing with the events inside her head, dealing with telling herself that she wants to leave this life behind, dealing with realizing that she loves this sort of flying, realizing that it's a dangerous addiction that she almost can't beat. And I would almost say the second main character of this book is stress. The book does a fantastic job of characterizing stress as this thing that's with you at all times in the cockpit, is curled up in the corner, ready to pounce, ready to take over. It characterizes it in such a way that makes me, while reading it, feel stressed. It's so real and vivid and emotive, it almost feels like the main antagonist of this book, rather than the forces of chaos. The book has this raw human edge to it that a lot of Warhammer books are missing, as 𝕤𝕬𝕜 and the characters around her deal with this addiction, this trauma, loss, stress. It gives these emotions this real visceral impact that is missing in a lot of Warhammer books. If I had to nitpick though, there are a few points that the book let me down a tiny bit. The first off is the sort of supporting cast, some of which are done relatively well, but for the themes of camaraderie that the book is trying to pull, a lot of them do come off as a bit cardboard, a bit two-dimensional. And I just kind of wish we did explore that a bit more, maybe a bit more time spent with Bree and the other squadron mates to build that rapport and build them into like some more believable character arcs. And secondly, the ending, while perfectly fine, I'm not left disappointed by the ending so much as I was just expecting it to be a bit more climactic. There are a couple ways the book clearly seems to be suggesting the ending is going to end up, and we don't really get there. We don't really have that final climactic big air battle that I think the book is setting up for most part. But we do solve some of the mysteries that are going on. We do have some good character moments and we do have some good action. It's just not exactly what I think I was expecting and kind of hoping for. Overall, though, I really, really enjoyed Interceptor City. It is the best Warhammer 40,000 book I have read in a very long while. I think I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It was so enjoyable. I think for my money, I still like 𝕓𝕠𝕠𝕟𝕟 just that tiny bit more, just because 𝕓𝕠𝕠𝕟𝕟 has that focus on kind of a more widespread section of the Aeronautica. We not only have the fighter pilots, but we also have like the bomber crews, the ground crews, and we even have some ground forces in that book as well, whereas this one really is just focused on these interceptor pilots in Interceptor City. But what is in this book is fantastic, really enjoyable, and I really do recommend it to anyone that really likes plane stories or Warhammer books. I have been really enjoying reading like Interceptor dogfighty books lately, so if anyone has any suggestions for any, please leave them in the comments below. If you want to pick up a copy of Interceptor City for yourself, there is a link in the description below. All it does is help support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything extra. Do all the algorithm things, like, comment, subscribe, but most of all, please just remember to keep reading. Thank you so much for watching. Ciao.